The following is a presentation of Prime Network. His domination of NASCAR's short tracks earned this driver the Busch Grand National Championship last season. Under the direction of his youthful crew chief, the championship team entered 1991 with unbridled enthusiasm. Repeating as champions will be tough, but the Nescafe Classic team is a threat to win each time they roll onto a racetrack. And tonight, you get to meet Busch Grand National Champion Chuck Bown and his crew chief, Jeff Hensley, on This Week in NASCAR. And now, from the Hensley Racing Shop in Ridgeway, Virginia, here's the host of This Week in NASCAR, Eli Gold.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to This Week in NASCAR. And yes, we are in Ridgeway, Virginia, or I guess more appropriately, we're in Horse Pasture, Virginia, which is a suburb of Ridgeway, which is a suburb of Martinsville, Virginia, where the Winston Cup cars will be running this weekend. We'll talk more about that and clear up the confusion as our evening continues. But we are honored to be here this evening, the folks at Hensley Racing having opened up the doors to their racing shops to us tonight. We'll be chatting with Jeff Hensley and driver Chuck Bown in just a very short while. As far as the news of this week is concerned, really not all that much. From the Winston Cup Series, Davey Allison, you might have heard, renewing his driving contract with Robert Yates Racing. It's a 3-year contract extension, so Davey is all set where he is. And as far as the Busch Series is concerned, a number of the drivers went out west this week to the Phoenix, Arizona area, the Firebird International Raceway. That's where Bob Bondurant has the School of High Performance Driving. The reason is that the Busch Series is going to a road course this year for the first time in a long time. Watkins Glen will host the Busch Series on June the 29th, and many of the fellows have never attacked a road course. That's not the case for our guest this evening, Chuck Bown, but many of the fellows had never been on a road circuit, so they went out to visit Bob Bondurant this week and try and learn their way around a race course that is anything but an oval. So that brings you up to date as far as the news is concerned. But the thrust of this evening's show is to visit with the Busch Grand National Championship team with Jeff Hensley and Chuck Bown. But you know, when you talk about Hensley Racing and the shop in which we sit right now, yes, it is home to a Busch Series title team, but actually Hensley Racing began just across the street at a shop that was developed by the patriarch of this racing team, Hubert Hensley, and he took us on a bit of a tour behind the scenes earlier this afternoon.
This is the shop that we started in back in the early 50s, when part of it was dirt floors, and we raced all over the United States and places like that, in Pennsylvania, all over every which way. And the first car I built to drive myself, and I got tore up in a car wreck and broke my neck, and the doctor told me that the best way for me not to get back in another car. And that's the way I got into being a car owner. That's the way it started.
Well, that is where it started, and now we are back across the street at the current home for Hensley Racing. Jeff Hensley, Chuck Bown, and this is Ubu down here, the family dog who has joined us, just kind of wandered onto the set, actually, just seconds ago. Jeff, it's nice to be able to see the roots of this racing team across the street. Must have been something I said, Ubu's leaving. But it's nice to see where the roots of this family team were, and now where you are with the championship cars surrounding us here.
Well, it is, Eli. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that we won the championship, is we are an established team, and roots mean a lot in this business. And we won several track championships through the years before the series started, but last year was our first national championship, and I'm just tickled to death that we could win it for my father. And so it was a year of first. Our first as a team, Chuck's first as a driver, and my father's first as a car owner.
I think one thing that has to be said, though, if it weren't for bad luck this year, this racing team probably wouldn't have any luck at all. And Chuck Bown, you've had decent runs, 3 top 10s here of late, but you've probably had more bad luck already this year than in all of 1990.
Yeah, the strategy for 1991 is to get the bad luck out of the way early. Actually, I think the good news is the season's young. There's a lot of races left to go, and a lot can still happen, and I think we're going to get back on track here and turn the luck around and get to victory lane soon, I hope.
We'll be coming back and open up the phone lines to you. It is toll-free from anywhere across the country, 1-800-292-5600. 5551. You see our toll-free number. When we come back, we will return to the Hensley shops here in Horse Pasture, Virginia. Jeff Hensley, Chuck Bown, and your calls and comments on This Week in NASCAR. Stay with us.
This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Today's Chevrolet, who invites you to see why more people are winning with the heartbeat of America. Budweiser, the king of beers, with that clean, crisp, cold taste. Nothing beats a Bud. By Valvoline, people who know use Valvoline. And by Plastic Coat, the winning finish.
Things in this life we can all count on. Qualities that we have come to know and trust. Pride, good friends, and simple, honest value. These are the things we know we can depend on. Chevrolet, the cars more Americans depend on. The heartbeat of America.
A company can learn a lot in 125 years. Valvoline has. You learn in the lab, you learn on the road, you learn on the racetrack. As you learn, you make your product better. And better, and better. Today's Valvoline will keep your engine cleaner than ever before. And cleaner means more protection against engine wear. 125 years of quality. That's why people who know use Valvoline.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hensley, crew chief of the Nescafe Classic Hensley Racing Pontiac. I'd like to go with you with the differences between a Winston Cup car and a Busch Grand National car. One of the biggest differences is the engine itself. We run V6s, the Winston Cup cars run V8s. Our engines put out approximately 480 horsepower. The Winston Cup cars put out approximately 650 horsepower. Even though our engines are less powerful, we still have to run a restrictor plate when we go to tracks like Daytona and Talladega. Now, let's talk about the differences in the frame. Even though there are some differences in the Busch Grand National and Winston Cup car, there are a lot of similarities. That is in the frame and the construction of the frames. Our cars are built mainly by Mike Laughlin from Greenville, South Carolina, a noted Winston Cup car builder. But here at Hensley Racing, we do our own tricks of the trade, so to speak. We think that makes a difference in winning and losing. It's what people do with the frames after they get them. The cars are built mainly from 125 thousandths square tubing. The frame rails are 3x4. The front and rear clips are 2x3. The roll cage is 90 thousandths thick, seamless, 1 3/4 round tubing. All this is similar to the Winston Cup cars. The guidelines and regulations for building a Winston Cup car and a Busch Grand National car are similar in roll cage and frame construction, but that's where the similarities end. A Winston Cup car measures 110-inch wheelbase, and a Busch Grand National car measures 105. The Winston Cup car weighs 3,500 pounds without the driver, and the Busch Grand National car weighs 3,200 pounds with the driver. And how we obtain these weights are with these lead ballast, which are placed inside the frame rails, and according to NASCAR regulations, must be kept inside a closed rail. Even though the differences in the engine, weight, and wheelbase, the Busch Grand National cars are very similar in speed to the Winston Cup cars. In fact, on the short tracks, the Busch Grand National cars are faster, and on the speedways, we're only 2 to 3 mile an hour slower. And thanks again for coming by Hensley Racing.
A very educational look at the similarities between the Busch Series car and the Winston Cup car. So I guess the next logical follow-up question is, when do we start seeing some Winston Cup cars for this operation? How far off is that?
Well, you know, we've been building a team here for the last couple of years, and to win a Busch Grand National Championship, and I think running Winston Cup, we need to take it step by step. So we'd like to do 3 or 4 races at the end of this year if it's possible. It's a little late right now to start, but we're looking at an 8 to 10 race schedule for next year, and hopefully, you know, if everything comes together, we'll be able to do that.
We'll be opening up our phone lines in just a moment at 1-800-292-5551. One thought to follow up on, though, Chuck, Jeff was himself a Busch Grand National driver for 3 seasons earlier in the 80s. Does that help the communication? And I guess it's a question both of you fellows can handle here. Does it help when your crew chief himself is a former driver? Does it open the lines of communications?
I think so, Eli. I think it's a big edge for me. A lot of the racetracks we first went to in '89 when we joined forces, I hadn't been to before, but Jeff had. And when I get out of the car and describe what it's doing in this part of the track or that part of the track, I think he comprehends it better than a lot of crew chiefs would, because he has been there, he has tried it out, and I think he maybe has a bit more respect for what I do out there because he's been there.
Do you have the itch to get back into a race car, or is that now behind you?
Nah, not really. You know, I really enjoy what I'm doing here, and I like to win, and when I was driving, I didn't win for the lack of finances, but, you know, I love what I'm doing now, and I don't see any reason to even think about getting back.
I remember that old orange number 2 car. It was awfully competitive, no doubt about it. Let's go to our first call of the evening, and that comes from Carl in Pembroke Pines, Florida. Hello, Carl.
How you doing, Eli, Chuck, Jeff?
Hey,
how's everybody doing tonight?
Super, thank you.
Okay, my question comes basically from the fact that I hear you're going to be going to Watkins Glen for the road courses. What different type of setup are you going to have to learn or approach to get the cars running to competitively on the road course?
Let's take that as a twofold question. Does the budget allow, from your standpoint, a formal road course car? Before we even talk about your road racing experience, what do you have to do?
Well, not really. It doesn't. You know, Winston Cup teams have probably 2 road course cars, but here we'll take a short track car and can convert it over, move everything from the left to the right, and just make a so-called temporary road course car out of it. But NASCAR changed the rules over the winter, and our cars were offset 1 inch last year from left to right. This year the cars are square, and basically we can take a good short track car and make a real competitive road course car out of it.
And as we said before, 6 or 8 of the fellows went to a road racing school this week, but you've been on road courses now. You probably have more laps on road circuits than any Busch Series driver, I would guess.
I probably do. That's probably fair to say. It's been a few years, though. I hope I'm not rusty. I hope it's like riding a bike, you know. But I'm looking forward to it. When I first heard about Watkins Glen becoming part of the Busch Grand National schedule, I got real excited because, in my opinion, from a driver's perspective, a road course is very challenging and a lot of fun.
A lot of the names that folks might not automatically think of, but Patty Moise, when the Busch Series ran at Road Atlanta a few years ago, she was one of the top qualifiers. And Troy Beebe, who runs on occasion with Busch Series and Winston Cup both, he is still the absolute track record holder out at Sears Point in Sonoma, California. So you've got some competition.
Oh, yeah. There'll be plenty of competition. We're not worried about that. There always is. Not to mention the Winston Cup guys that'll probably compete that know a little bit about Watkins Glen. So it'll be a good show.
If you're just joining us, we are live with you from Ridgeway, Virginia, here at the Hensley Racing Shops. The name of our show is This Week in NASCAR. We're with you every Thursday evening at 11 o'clock Eastern here on Prime Network. We're coming back. More of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
Rugby, it's not for the faint of heart. $1991 International Rugby is on NESN.
County Speedway is the site of this particular Busch Grand National Series race. Chuck Bown in car number 63 finally pulling away to the win, but a little three-wide racing there for a while, Chuck.
That's an exciting racetrack, Eli. It's quite wide, a lot of room to run, and it was awfully good to us last year. We won them both there and had a great time.
The Busch Series runs on some tough racetracks. So, I mean, you've got the Linear Raceway this week. Hickory is so very tough because it's such a compact racetrack. It is. Some of these tracks don't get as much play, possibly, as the Winston Cup regular tracks do, but this is not an easy circuit.
Oh, no, it's not. A lot of competition, a lot of different winners each and every year. And, you know, the fields, like at North Wilkesboro with the Winston Cup race last weekend, was extremely tight. It's that way every week in Busch Grand National Racing. If you're more than a third of a second off the pole position, you load up and go home. So it's good racing.
I remember a number of weeks ago at Hickory Motor Speedway, they sent about 11 cars home, and it was like an all-star field that went home, guys who didn't make the race, so you're absolutely right. Let's go out to Lakewood, Colorado. The folks who are watching on Prime Network out in the Colorado region, good evening, you're on the air.
Hello, Eli. Hello, fellows.
Hello, Bob.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for having this great show. It gives a lot of the racers here in Colorado a chance to see some of the big guys.
Super, glad you joined in tonight.
Yeah, my main question is about the upcoming safety. A lot of cars come out of Detroit have analog brakes, airbags, and all those neat things. I was wondering if you intended on putting analog brakes on the race cars there, and perhaps automatic onboard fire extinguishers and things like that.
You want to approach that, the anti-lock brakes? Is that something that would go in Winston Cup or Busch Series racing?
Sometimes, you know, if you want them to stop quicker than they do. But no, I don't think it would. But we already have the onboard fire extinguisher systems that they are plumbed. One nozzle's running to the engine compartment, one to the fuel cell, and one to the driver compartment. So that's, you know, NASCAR's real good on making sure we keep the cars safe and giving us the guidelines to build a car safe by. So I don't know. I'm not sure about the analog brakes, but I don't think it would really work here.
The driver is the anti-lock brake.
Exactly. It's up to him to try and roll it down as quick as you can. You know, one of the interesting things, though, if you go with an airbag, or those I mean, last week at Wilkesboro or at Bristol, those babies be popping all day long. We've got a visitor here at the Hensley shops from Danville, Virginia. Frank, how are you tonight?
Okay, how you doing, Eli?
Great,
Eli.
thank you.
I'd like to ask my question for you, Eli. You know, there's been great concern about safety on pit road here recently. NASCAR has been taking a lot of measures, you know, to try to work that out. What are they going to do about the safety on the track? The last couple of races have been like a demolition derby, so do you know of anything that they could do to make the track more?
Well, I'm going to be real smooth right here and hand off to the two gentlemen on this panel who have driven a race car, because the next lap I turn will be the very first one I turn. What happens? That's a good question Frank brings up. Not so much the safety, because these cars are basically built like tanks. But what happens on a track like Bristol or Wilkesboro? I mean, does everybody just lose their cool all of a sudden? Is it contagious? Do you just finally say, man, I'm tired of somebody leaning on me, and you start leaning back? What gives? What's the breaking point?
Well, I just think it's kind of, as the 1990s are here, racing has become so competitive. There's so many teams out there that have good sponsorships and have a lot of demands on them and a lot of pressures on them to win and get the job done and you know, be successful. And not everybody's going to win the race. When you have 30 guys out there that all really have a shot at it, only one's going to get there. And it just makes for trying to get into places that maybe there isn't room for, and then patience, like you say, gets short, and it's tough, you know.
One other element, too, is the fact that the closer you are to the front, the more exposure you will get on the telecast of that particular race, more time you'll be talked about on the MRN radio broadcast of the event. More airtime equals a happier sponsor, and that's something, you know, the screen is only that wide, and only X number of cars are going to fit on the screen.
But it's kind of interesting that at North Wilkesboro last week, the car that ended up winning had the fewest marks on it. You know,
Exactly.
Darrell Waltrip took care of his equipment and got the job done when it counted.
That's typical of Darrell on the short track, certainly. I want to take a quick second here to remind everybody about our next few shows here on This Week in NASCAR. Next week, the Winston Cup Series at the Talladega Superspeedway, and we'll be at Davey Allison's shop. In 2 weeks, Derek Cope will be with us at, actually May the 16th to be exact, at the Adams Mark Hotel in Charlotte. That will be open to the public. We'd love to have you come by and join us. And then the week of the 600 at the Charlotte Motor Speedway will be at the Bahari Racing Shops with Michael Waltrip as our special guest, along with his crew chief, Bill Engel. So those are the next 3 shows upcoming here on This Week in NASCAR. As soon as we come back, more of your calls, so stay with us here on Prime Network. We return to the Hensley shops right after this.
to a shot to right center field. Very deep toward the bullpen. That's long gone. Home run. 4-0.
It's time to hit the road. The Sox head to Kansas City to take on the Royals, and Nesson has all the action. Saturday Red Sox Digest starts you off live at 2, and it's game time live at 2:30. Nesson, your ticket to Red Sox baseball.
Ever-increasing demands for oil have created political and economic turmoil around the world. Here in America, domestic oil producers are responding to the challenge of producing oil more cost-efficiently than traditional methods that would drill vertically into the ground, either hitting or missing oil pay zones. But innovative technology in a process known as horizontal drilling can make use of existing wells by lowering pipes to certain levels and then drilling horizontally to tap into oil trapped in existing vertical pockets. Estimates for one of these horizontal wells is an impressive 19,000 barrels a day. To learn how this new drilling technique has created investment opportunities in the rising oil market, call 1-800-243-1941. You'll also learn how this is one of the last tax advantages left in the U.S. Congress has allocated $2.5 billion worth of tax advantages for the next 5 years to spur drilling activity for oil and gas production. Now more than ever, producing American oil makes sense. Call 1-800-243-1941.
It's a doubleheader of underwater excitement Saturday mornings on Nesson. Take a trip to the world beneath the waves, from the warm waters of the Caribbean to the coast of Maine. Join us at 8 for Scuba World, where you'll visit some of the most beautiful diving vacation spots in the world. And then at 8:30, host Mark Stanton will guide you through the waters of New England on Divers Down. Tune in Saturday mornings starting at 8. The adventure and excitement of scuba diving right here on Nesson.
This week in NASCAR with you from the shops of the Nescafe Classic Pontiac here in Ridgeway, Virginia. Looking there behind the scenes is Jeff Hensley and the crew. Driver Chuck Bown talk over strategies and pit stops, now very much a thing of art in the Busch Series as they are in Winston Cup.
Without a doubt. You know, we've got a tire rule in the Busch Grand National Series where we can't change tires under the caution, which puts pressure on the crew because this year they've paved a lot of tracks, and with a rival tire company coming in, the tires are a little bit more on the edge, and we have to make a lot of green flag stops. So you know, we put a lot of effort into it, and I think we're as good as they are maybe on the Busch Grand National Circuit.
A lot of folks may not realize that there is a tire war going again in the Busch Series with Goodyear, the established supplier, with Hoosier returning again. Does that, let's elaborate a little bit more, not so much on the tire war itself, but you're saying you're having to adjust because the tires are a little different?
Well, you know, anytime you got competition, the next guy's going to try to undercut the next guy. So, you know, the tires are a little bit softer this year, really. Basically, that's it, bottom line. And you can't abuse the tires. You have to set the car up a little bit different from what we did last year, and have to run a thinking man's race because we still have the tire rule, and we can't change under the caution.
A lot of decisions that a crew chief has to make. As a matter of fact, the same thing in Winston Cup racing, where the crew chiefs have to make those split-second decisions. And the way things stand right now in the Plastic Coat Winning Finish Award, that, of course, is an honor that goes to the crew chief who wins the preceding week's Winston Cup race. Waddell Wilson leading on the seasonal basis right now. There's the average finishes, as you see. Tony Glover, crew chief for Ernie Irvin. Kirk Shelmerdine for the Dale Earnhardt team. Steve Meal for Mark Martin. And Larry McReynolds, now the crew chief for Davey Allison. The folks from Plastic Coat sponsoring the Winning Finish Award. Let's go to Mike in Jacksonville, Florida, our next call, watching on the Sunshine Network. Hello.
Hey, Eli, great show.
Thank you, sir.
Chuck, congratulations on your 1990 championship.
Thank you.
My question is for Jeff. I didn't hear what the question about the anti-lock brakes was earlier, but I know Martinsville was brutal on brakes, and I was wondering if a dual caliper or maybe a carbon fiber rotor and brake pad would be a viable option for the Busch Grand National cars.
Well, the dual caliper was tried years ago by Richard Petty, and it created too much heat for the rotor itself. And carbon fiber is so expensive, it's not legal for NASCAR competition. We do run a carbon fiber brake pad, which really works well at Martinsville, but with the Busch cars being lighter than the Winston Cup cars, we really don't see a lot of brake problems at Martinsville unless your chassis is not right. The weight's not there, and we just we just keep fresh fluid in the system and run all the air ducts we can to them. And then since Chuck's been driving for us, we haven't had a single problem at Martinsville at all with brakes.
That's the best deal there. Just lay off the brake pedal
right.
if you can. Let's go to Charles in Sugar Hill, Georgia, watching on Sports South. Hello.
Hey, hello, Eli, Chuck, and Jeff. I've got a question. I'd like to know, what's the entry fee for Busch Grand National car and a driver and for the Winston Cup? And what's the setup that you're going to be running Saturday at Lanier? Being I only live 20 miles away, I might be able to see you up there.
And I'm not taking notes for somebody else, he promises. What does it cost to get into a race? Something we never talk about.
The entry fee varies from race to race. Most of the time it's $100 a race. The Oxford 250, which is the highest paying race we run all year, is $200. You know, you race for more money.
So you pay more. How about the Lanier Raceway this weekend in Gainesville, Georgia? A difficult track to set up for or not?
Well, we've been pretty fortunate down there. We've run twice there with Chuck, and we've won the pole both times, and we've had the best car both times. The first time we blew an engine while leading, and then last year I'm not trying to be egotistical here, but we led every lap and really ran well. As far as the setup, I'm not letting anybody know what we do down there.
I bet not, but whatever it is, it's working just fine. You're right. It's not often you see a man go to a racetrack and lead every single lap. You'll notice a little note in the record books every now and then. Cale Yarborough did it once at Bristol, and who else? Charlie Glotzback once, and Darrell Derringer once at North Wilkesboro, but you rarely see that kind of a notation. These guys have a lot to be proud of. We're coming back. More of This Week in NASCAR. Stay with us.
Sox baseball is back with Fenway Fun in 91. Fenway is even more fun when you are part of a group, and the Red Sox can accommodate groups of almost any size. Have a pregame party at the Diamond at Fenway Function Room and join the Red Sox for Fenway Fun in 91. For information and arrangements for groups of under 40 people, call 617-267-1700. For groups of 40 or more and to make arrangements for Diamond at Fenway, call 617-262-1915. MasterCard and Visa accepted.
A good look at the Nescafe Classic Pontiacs as we welcome you back to the Hensley Racing shops here in Ridgeway, Virginia. That's Ubu applauding in the background. That's your family pet. How old is the dog now?
She's about 1.5 years old now.
She's a sweetheart. She really is. Our next question is from out on the West Coast. We've got a questioner in Hayward, California. Wally is watching on Prime Ticket tonight. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing,
Eli? Hi, Chuck. Hi, Jeff.
How you doing?
How you all doing?
Great.
Thanks for a nice program, Eli.
Thank you, sir.
My question is, I'm a diehard Ford fan. I'm sorry to explain it, but I was wondering, I heard about a year ago that Ford was down on horsepower. Did they ever get those parts approved for the Busch Grand National cars?
Where is the V6 project now for Ford? Last I heard is basically the same thing, although Morgan Shepherd was saying at one point that he hopes that the situation had gotten back in gear. But I guess as it has been for the last little bit, Ford has been not quite as dominant, yet we've seen Fords run well. I mean, it's not a Pontiac only or an Oldsmobile only or a Chevrolet only circuit. The Fords have been competitive.
Yeah, I think they've came a long way. A lot of times you cry wolf and the deal, well, we haven't got enough horsepower, but we followed the Ford V6s before, and they're competitive, you know.
Mark
V6s.
won a Grand National race last year with
and
with
Jeff Gordon.
Exactly.
Jeff Gordon's running this year, and I mean, he's qualifying good and running good everywhere he goes, and you've got to have horsepower to be able to do that.
Exactly. A caller on the Chevy race line watching down in Homestead, Florida. Hello.
Okay, this question is for Chuck.
Okay.
I want to know how a Busch Grand National driver let me see how I would say, prepares himself mentally to run a NASCAR driver. You know,
against the Winston Cup fellows, yeah.
Okay. Well, I kind of get excited when they come and run with us, you know, really, because I'd like to be running Winston Cup myself, and being as I don't have the opportunity to run Winston Cup right now, it's nice to get to run against them on Saturday instead of Sunday. But mentally, I don't think I do anything different than I, normally would for any race, and that's just go out there and, run the best I can, run as hard as I can.
This question probably isn't the best for you because you have so much experience now, but at the outset, Were you cognizant of the fact that you were barreling off into turn number 1 alongside a Dale Earnhardt versus whether you were barreling off into the corner against a Busch Series regular? Do you know who you're racing, or does it not matter really?
It really doesn't matter to me. To me, if somebody's in front of me, I'm trying to catch them and pass them, regardless whether they're a Busch driver or a Winston Cup driver. I really try not to, look at it with any difference whatsoever.
We've got Doug from Reidsville, North Carolina, that is, joining us here at the shops. Good evening, Doug.
Hi, Eli. I'd just like to ask Chuck if he has a favorite track from the West Coast to the Northeast or the NASCAR circuits, if he has a favorite one that really sticks out.
Well, one that really sticks out, I really can't say that I do. Oxford, Maine has been awful good to me financially, and our record in Orange County is tremendous, but and I think I like to drive the road courses the best, and Daytona's drafting is a heck of a lot of fun, so I like them all. If it's a racetrack, I like it.
We've got a question now from Scott in Big Rapids, Michigan. He's watching on the Pass Network tonight. Hello.
Hello there.
Hello.
I'd like to say hi to Ubu.
Oh, Ubu says hello.
My question stems from the little footnote that you did on the difference between the Busch Grand National and the Winston Cup cars.
Yeah.
You said that the wheel length between the two cars was shortened by, I believe, 4 inches or so. And my question is that NASCAR sets such strict regulations on the size and dimensions of the car, being from the factory, that they have to maintain that, the exact factory dimensions. Where do the rules change to allow that to happen?
In Daytona Beach.
Well, the rules are established to make sure that competition remains steady and close and interesting for the racing fan. So there are obviously some changes. There are many cars that are running now that are strictly front-wheel drive machines, but for racing purposes, they're rear-wheel drive. So there are certain stipulations, because the bottom line is you got to keep the competition where it has been, and that's what the fans want to see.
I think they picked the production cars to begin with that are most similar to the wheelbase that they want us to race with, one from each model that's out there, and then they lock them in all to the same dimension for the competition. It makes it easier on the chassis builders, and it keeps the competition closer.
Should mention, we're just about 10 miles or so down the road from Martinsville, Virginia. The NASCAR Modified Tour runs on Saturday in the Haynes 150. The Winston Cup cars Sunday in the Haynes 500. The track opens tomorrow, and Busch Pole qualifying is set for tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock for the Winston Cup machines. The cars who have already qualified for the Busch Clash in 1992, that's the list right there. Davey Allison, Kyle Petty, Alan Kulwicki, Brett Bodine, of course, adding his name last weekend at North Wilkesboro. And we'll find out whether one of those gentlemen will return to add another Busch Pole to his credit tomorrow, or possibly a new name in time for our list next week. We're coming back, more of your calls with Jeff Hensley and Chuck Bown on This Week in NASCAR, live on Prime Network. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Mountain Man 101. Let's begin. This is a mountain man. Notice his love of great natural beauty, his instinctive resourcefulness, his healthy respect for a fine pair of cowboy boots. However, the easiest way to identify a mountain man is to look at his hands, which will no doubt be holding a smooth Busch beer or an easy drinking Busch Light. So, head for the mountains and learn to live life as a man among men.
A company can learn a lot in 125 years. Valvoline has. You learn in the lab, you learn on the road, you learn on the racetrack. As you learn, you make your product better. And better, and better. Today's Valvoline will keep your engine cleaner than ever before. And cleaner means more protection against engine wear. 125 years of quality. That's why people who know use Valvoline.
Mission: create the ultimate automobile polish. Mission accomplished. Liquid Crystal, the most technologically advanced automobile polish ever made. A dull, faded blazer, the shine instantly restored with no rubbing, no buffing. And after 104 car washes, water still beads. Liquid Crystal will shine and protect better than any car wax you've ever used, or your money back. Liquid Crystal, quite simply, the best shine and protection money can buy.
You're looking
looking at the only motorcycles in the world with built-in insurance. Yamaha, the only motorcycles in the world that offer 1 year's full coverage insurance built right into the price. Yamaha. And all you need to qualify is a valid driver's license. The financing is just as easy. Now go your own way with Yamaha, the only motorcycles in the world with built-in insurance, and only at your Yamaha dealer.
Welcome back to This Week in NASCAR. We're chatting tonight with the 1990 Busch Grand National Series Championship team, driver Chuck Bown and crew chief Jeff Hensley. If you'd like to join us, it is toll-free, 1-800-292-5551. It's a toll-free call from anywhere across the country. Just down the road a piece here is Spencer, Virginia, and that's the hometown of our next questioner. Robin is joining us here at the shop from Spencer. Hello.
Hi, my question is for Jeff and Chuck. How do you feel about the new safety rules that they have put on for pit road now?
Of course, now we're basically in Winston Cup back to where it started, but the onus now is on the driver. If the drivers digress from the rules, it's more than a slap on the wrist. There are some serious rules now with teeth in them. So you guys have the responsibility as drivers in general to make sure you don't get set down for a lap or 2 or 5 or what have you.
Yeah, that's true, but I think in the long run it's all for the best because, you know, it's our responsibility to come in there responsibly, slow, and under control. Yet the racing's still going on in the pits, and it's not going to affect the restarts, the yellow flags, and all that, and now everybody can tell who's leading the race when and so forth. So I don't think it's going to affect Busch Grand National Racing much. I still don't think we'll be allowed on the small tracks to change tires under the caution, although we never were. And on the super speedways, I haven't heard what's going to happen yet. I look for us to go back to being allowed 2 tires per caution like before the changes, but I'm not sure about that. That's just speculation.
We'll find out about that shortly, certainly. Let's take a call now from one of the most beautiful cities in all of America, San Francisco, California. Tom, watching tonight on the Pacific Sports Network. Hello.
Hello. I'd like to ask Chuck, what's the fastest speed you've ever gone? And what's it like, or how scary is it to turn left after doing that?
And make sure you don't turn right unless you're on a road course. Are you at the speeds in excess of 200 miles an hour? Are you just along for the ride, or do you have good control on those race cars?
Well, the truth is, you know, when the teams do their job and the cars are really right, they're quite comfortable at 200 miles an hour. And by the way, that is about the top speed I ran in a race car at Daytona Beach. But you know, when you get to the corner at Daytona, even though you're going 200, you don't even lift. You just keep the throttle right on the floor and you just steer it through the corner. But you know, it's high banked racetrack. It's a 2.5 mile oval, so there's enough room to do that. But
this might be a silly question, but if you're riding down the highway in a pack of cars going whatever speed, if you're abiding by the speed limit or what have you, if everybody's going the same speed, you don't notice quite how quickly you're going. Do you kind of get that feeling? Do you get desensitized even at 195 if everybody around you is also going 195? Do you feel like you're going 55?
Well, that can happen. You can get very comfortable, and all of a sudden, when it's time to make a pit stop, that's when it gets your attention to how fast you're going, and you have to turn reality back on in a hurry because to go from 200 to 0 takes a while. You know, it's 200-pound race cars. It takes a long time. You're on the brake very hard and downshifting a lot. And when you get down to about 40 or 50 miles an hour on pit road, you feel like you could get out and walk. You know, you think you're stopped, and you're actually not.
You
still need a few more feet to get it down to 0.
I bet you do. Let's go down to Steve in Pensacola, Florida, our next caller on the Chevy race line. Hello.
Yeah, I was wanting to ask Chuck if he ever gets a chance to do any grassroots racing like the all-pro late models or anything, and ask him why he hadn't paid a visit down to Pensacola to run in the Snowball Derby.
Good old Five Flag Speedway there.
Yeah, well, I used to always really wish I had the opportunity to run down there because I know it was always a big paying race and a lot of competition. And I just basically never got the opportunity to. It's about what it amounts to, and still haven't. I've done some grassroots racing up north during my Busch Grand National North days. I did some open competition type racing at different tracks throughout New England, but as far as Pensacola, just the opportunity never came my way, so I never got there.
How about yourself, Jeff, when you were driving, or even these days in a crew chief role, do you ever get the idea to maybe try the open-wheel cars. Did you ever think, I mean, we've seen a lot of Winston Cup guys, the Allisons, a number of them who have been to the Brickyard. They were talking about Kyle maybe driving an Indy car. Jeff Bodine climbed into one at Michigan. Did that ever intrigue you, either as a car preparer or a driver?
When I was younger, it did. I had a dream of winning the Indy 500, which, what 10-year-old that wants to drive a race car doesn't have that dream, but it did. I'm intrigued by the modifieds. I mean, I wouldn't race modifieds, but I'm intrigued. There's a lot of technology involved with those cars, and they run awfully fast. And,
they really do.
And I like those cars, just to watch them race. I don't want to drive one, but I'd like to watch them race.
And they are at Martinsville this weekend. The Haynes 150 is the companion event to the Haynes 500 that runs for the Winston Cup cars on Sunday. We're coming right back. More of your calls and comments on This Week in NASCAR here live on Prime Network. I would think the driving, though, is altogether different.
Be at Fenway Park on Saturday, May 11th at 1:05 p.m. to see your favorite ball players from days past. Upper Deck brings you the 1991 Heroes of Baseball game, complete with a complimentary commemorative Heroes of Baseball souvenir sheet. After the Heroes of Baseball game, the Red Sox battle the Texas Rangers at 3:05 p.m. Come see your favorites old and new at Fenway Park for Upper Deck Heroes of Baseball. To charge your tickets by phone, call 617-267-1700. Be a part of Fenway Fun at 91. Order your tickets today.
We are back on This Week in NASCAR, just sharing a light moment or so here with Chuck Bown and Jeff Hensley. Our next caller out on the West Coast from West Covina, California. And good evening. You're on This Week in NASCAR. Hello.
Hello. How are you, Eli?
Great, Ron. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. I have a question for Jeff or Chuck. Would you like to see a race like the Busch Clash for NASCAR come into BNG?
Oh, yeah. I'd love it. I would love the opportunity to do that because we've already won a pole this year, so we'd be in it next year. But,
where would it run if you had the magic wand to say this is the track, it's going to, a Busch Series version of the Busch Clash, where would you like to see it?
Orange County. We won both races there last year. Somewhere on the short tracks because that's...
a short track where you can pass, and
right.
that would be a good one.
That's a good racetrack.
Two-groove race, three-groove racetrack.
That's a beautiful racetrack. A lot of folks may have never visited Orange County, but that's... one of the Taj Mahals of short tracks, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a good show to boot. Always, it's plenty of excitement in Orange County.
Let's go to Randy in Frederick, Maryland, our next caller. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Hello.
This is a question for either of you gentlemen. How did you go about getting a sponsor like Nescafe to support you, and how much do they support you financially on an annual basis?
Dollar figures, well, dollar figures notwithstanding, and that's really a personal situation, but they were new, basically, to the sport. Do you just go out and start knocking on doors and say, would you like to come into Winston Cup or Busch Series racing? Well, what was the first move?
Well, it all started at Charlotte in October of 1988. Nescafe had, I guess, tracked the NASCAR series as a good marketing, media, and they wanted to be involved. And the budget that they had to work with was not enough for a Winston Cup budget, and was a real good budget for a Busch Grand National team. And I think there's probably 10 teams that sent proposals, and me and Chuck and Mark Garrow even went and sat down face to face with the people in Purchase, New York, and made a proposal. And I think we had a lot to offer a sponsor, and we were lucky enough to get them.
Mark Garrow being the public relations representative for the Hensley Racing team. A quick reminder about our next few shows here on This Week in NASCAR. Again, next Thursday night at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, we will be in Hueytown, Alabama. Davey Allison's Busch team is now occupying what used to be Bobby Allison's old shop, and we'll be with Davey in Hueytown next Thursday night at 11 o'clock. In a couple of weeks' time down the road, the weekend of the Winston, NASCAR's All-Star Race, will be at the Adams Mark Hotel in Charlotte. Derek Cope, the driver of the Purolator Chevrolet, will be our guest. Then the week thereafter, prior to the 600-mile race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, we'll be at the Bahari Racing Shops for Michael Waltrip. at 11 o'clock Eastern Time here on This Week in NASCAR. We're chatting with Chuck Bown and Jeff Hensley, and we do have time for more of your calls and comments at 1-800-292-5551. This weekend, the Busch Series runs at the Lanier Raceway in Gainesville, Georgia. We'll talk about that and much more as soon as we come back on Prime Network. Stay with us.
Bruins Hockey Clinic, sponsored by Nesson. We're taking time out for our kids.
We are back on Prime Network this week in NASCAR from the Hensley Racing shops here in Ridgeway, Virginia. Gretchen from Stoneville, North Carolina is our next questioner, joining us right here in the racing shops. Good evening.
Good evening. My question is for both Jeff and Chuck. I was wondering if you're going to race on the Winston Cup Series next year with Nescafe.
And we had touched on the fact that you'd like to go Winston Cup racing. Does Nescafe come along? Has that been talked about?
We hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we've talked to them, and they've talked to us and expressed a realistic interest in going Winston Cup racing. But you know, Nescafe now has got or maybe I should say Hills Brothers now, has got a larger product line since they kind of had a realignment of the company. And Nescafe is just one of their products. And the people there, I think they see the benefits of racing, and they're a great sponsor. They're a great bunch of people to work with, and they've never once said, you know, why aren't you winning? And when we weren't winning in 1989, and now that we're kind of struggling, so to speak, the first part of the season, it's nothing but good said. And I would really, you know, I think we can do it, and I think they believe we can do it.
That's the kind of sponsor you'd like to run for, isn't it, and run with. Let's go to Sylvester, Georgia, viewer on Sports South. David, how are you tonight?
I'm fine.
Great.
My question's for you, Eli, but I really enjoy that Busch Grand National racing when they carry it on TV. I'd like to know what can be done about these networks that going to carry the races, and they tape them and show them a day later?
Well, the bottom line there is that each individual racetrack, that's one thing we need to remember here, this is not a NASCAR decision, but each individual racetrack negotiates with the television network of their choosing, be it CBS, be it ABC, ESPN, TNN, whomever, Prime Network in the case of some Busch Series races. The tracks have the right to negotiate with whomever they would like, and the rights fees that are paid and so on reflect whether the race is live, whether it's tape delayed on the same day, or in the case of Wilkesboro, losing out on a whole day because of the NFL draft. So that situation is really one that the racetracks, I don't want to say create for themselves, but it is part of the negotiated package when you talk about televising Winston Cup or Busch Series racing. Let's go down to Pensacola, Florida for our next questioner. Beth is watching on the Sunshine Network. Hello.
Hi, come on, guys. Let the dog back on the show. He was being good.
She's just wandering around here somewhere, but she's welcome to rejoin us anytime. What's your question?
I don't know Steve from Pensacola, but obviously we have the same thing in mind. I'd like to say I love your show, Eli, and best wishes to Chuck and Jeff. Obviously, we'd love to have you come drive the Snowball Derby. Your wife would enjoy the shopping. Your kids would enjoy the beaches. It's wonderful. Think about it.
Yeah. Beth must work for the Chamber of Commerce. Bring your bathing suit and your credit cards, and we appreciate your calling in. Thank you. How many races do you get, or how many events, more so than races, how many demands are there on your time as the Busch Series champion versus what we hear from Winston Cup fellows who are gone, you know, on 200 or so different days a year? Do you have that same kind of a pull on you?
Yeah, I don't think it's probably what Dale Earnhardt's is, but I'm quite busy. I really am. Between testing with Jeff and you know, different media things that come along, and then the appearances for Nescafe, it keeps me quite busy. I don't have near the days off that I'd like, that's for sure.
Let's go to Charleston, West Virginia. Vicki is watching on the KBL Sports Network. Hello.
Hello, Eli.
Hello there.
Hello, Chuck and Jeff.
How you doing?
I'd like to ask you, either one of the guys, about the Grand National races. How do they determine the driver for the Grand National races? I've noticed that Dale Earnhardt and Harry Gant are really the only two Winston Cup drivers that I usually see in the Grand National races. We're a Bill Elliott fan, and we can't figure out why he's never in them.
Some drivers just don't like Ricky Rudd will not run another race outside of Winston Cup, and I guess it's a personal choice, basically.
That's basically their option. You know, if the opportunities come for them and they want to do it, then they can come and try to qualify like anybody else. But, you know, Harry Gant and Dale Earnhardt spend a lot of time up front and get noticed a lot, but actually there's several that are competing week in and week out. And the way I got in Grand National Racing as a driver is Jeff hired me. We got together and talked about it, and I got the ride or the job when it became available. So there's no real rules or definite roads to get a ride in Grand National or Winston Cup or any kind of motorsports. It's all unique and between the team owners and drivers who just get together and work out deals.
We're chatting with Chuck Bown and Jeff Hensley. If you're just joining us on This Week in NASCAR, we'll be back to wrap it up from the Hensley Racing shops here in Ridgeway, Virginia, after we break away for these words on Prime Network. Stay with us. There is no...
Common misconceptions about the mountain man. 3, that a mountain man's best friend is his horse. 2, that a mountain man only packs a 6-gun. And 1, that a mountain man only has one favorite, beer. Actually, mountain men are known to favor both smooth bush beer and easy drinking bush light. So, head for the mountains and find out how a real mountain man preserves wildlife.
And there's the checkered flag.
When the race is over, the scene begins. The Winston Cup scene. It's the largest and most informative NASCAR Winston Cup newspaper in the country. The pages of the Winston Cup scene are loaded with up-to-date information, insightful editorials and commentary, expanded coverage of each race, entertaining feature articles, the latest news, terrific photography, complete statistics, and even the gossip.
45 great issues, only $35. Call 1-800-800-1865 or send check or money order to Winston Cup Scene today.
Hey, Bill, checking out the scene? How'd I do?
Well, let's see. Petty. Richard Petty?
Why don't you take over? I'm into the scene. Why don't you get into the scene, too?
For the best in motorsports reading, it's Winston Cup Scene. Call 1-800-800-1865. MasterCard, Visa accepted.
You're looking at the only motorcycles in the world with built-in insurance. Yamaha. The only motorcycles in the world that offer 1 year's full coverage insurance built right into the price. Yamaha. And all you need to qualify is a valid driver's license. The financing is just as easy. Now go your own way with Yamaha. The only motorcycles in the world with built-in insurance, and only at your Yamaha dealer.
Of the 4 cars here at the Hensley Racing shops, the one you're looking at right now behind us will be the one you'll drive this weekend in the Kroger Nestle 200 at Lanier Raceway. Is this car, very quickly, is this car basically ready to roll when it gets off the truck at Lanier this weekend, or do you have to start tweaking a good bit?
No, basically, I think the only dismantling that will happen is to get through inspection, which is mandatory every race. But Jeff and all the guys here at Hensley Racing do a tremendous job of having our cars well prepared when we get there. And that's a big key to success in this business, because practice time is very limited. And if you're fooling around doing maintenance work that should have done at the shop, you're behind.
Chuck Bown, Jeff Hensley, gentlemen both, thanks so much for your hospitality. Great being here with you this evening. I want to remind everybody again that next Thursday evening, the same time, 11 o'clock Eastern, we'll be on the air taking your calls and comments for driver Davey Allison. We'll be together with Davey at his racing shop in Hueytown, Alabama. That is next Thursday evening. Until then, for all of us at Prime Network and This Week in NASCAR, Eli Gold, good night, everybody. Thank you.
This